Right, now Chapter 6 of the Constitution was designed to ensure good leadership and integrity for all appointed and elected office holders. Now, as we speak, we have leaders whose integrity is questionable, fronting themselves for elective positions, either wanting to unseat or be in government, in the coming government that is from the August 9th elections. What happened to us as a country? Have we just, have we just thrown caution to the wind when it comes to holding leaders accountable and making sure that those who are questionable when it comes to matters integrity don't go, rather are not elected into office? We want to look deep into this issue, and joining me for this discussion on matters leadership and integrity is Alice Ongare, who is a lawyer. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you. All
right, and I have Derek Mahandia, who is a program officer, policy, legal and institutional framework at the Transparency International Kenya, and also Wanjiru Gikonyo joining us virtually, who is a national coordinator, TISA. Now, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for making time for this discussion here and just to look at leadership and integrity, especially right now as we are heading to the next general elections. Now, we've seen politicians who have, taken thrown themselves into the race when it comes to just wanting elective positions. But some of them, and just yesterday we saw a list of them being released, a list of those who are red-carded, if I put it right, being released. The list was released, and just the leaders who have questionable integrity when it comes to matters integrity in this country. And I'd just like to get to how we got to this particular moment, whereby those who even themselves know that their integrity is questionable but are still fronting themselves for elective positions. And I'll start with you, Derek. Where did we go wrong when it comes to matters integrity and leaders?
Thank you very much, Brian. I think we lost it shortly after we passed the new constitution. Mm-hmm. And the first crop of leaders that were elected into office had serious questions of integrity. Mm-hmm. And it started all the way up. And I remember at that time, civil society organizations, we went to court trying to get the court's interpretation on just what exactly is clearance on Chapter 6. What are the standards on leadership of integrity? Are they mandatory? Mm-hmm. And who clears them? So at that time, we were not so lucky. The court gave an interpretation which did not favor the realization of Chapter 6, and we had persons cleared into office who had significant issues of corruption. And I think it just opened up the door to everyone else who did not meet the threshold into office.
All right, now let me come to you, Alice, before I go to Wanjiru. Alice, you are an advocate, and here you're talking about you are an advocate, and also you've been in the political field. Yes. And we've interacted with these politicians, different. Yes. Yes. Where would you say we actually lost it when it comes to looking at the right crop of leaders to lead this country?
Okay. First of all, I would just like to bring a little relations between, the way the Constitution has been framed vis-a-vis, the public behavior, because I have interacted in the public space with the public. I have also at some point offered myself for election on public office, and you know what really happens. So first of all is first to single out Article 1 of the Constitution, which talks about all sovereign power belonging to the people, and it should be exercised strictly in accordance with the Constitution. And therefore now we need to check as against the backdrop of the behavior of the people. So what I'm just trying to say is that there is a mismatch between the people's understanding of the Constitution vis-a-vis perhaps what they expect from their leaders and their politicians. Because, for example, when I was vying, you find that people are expectant of, handouts. They really want to capitalize and commercialize politics. And you find yourself at a cul-de-sac as the candidate, because then you have to bend over backwards towards the demands of the people because you're so desperate to be elected. Again, going back to the provisions of Chapter 6, it's a very lean chapter, of the Constitution. I think it's the most brief. And why I believe the drafters made it as so is because because, again, the powers of legislation in furtherance of the provisions were donated to the National Assembly. Actually, it's even written here, you know, most of the acts, even the establishment of the Anti-Corruption Commission has been left to the National Assembly. So again, it juxtaposes as to how we still have those members who are red-carded yesterday. Most of them are members of the National Assembly. And the National Assembly exercises direct representation to the people. So it still takes us back again to Wanjiko and their fickle understanding of what leadership and integrity really is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wanjiru, let me come to you. We have a red card of these are the leaders that are not fit to be in office because of their integrity issues. But still, it seems that even after red carding them, it still might not hold water. Then what do we do in this case?
Can hear me?
I can't hear you.
Sound from your side is a little bit shaky.
Okay.
First of all, I think you know, when we say that citizens don't have an understanding of leadership, that's not true. Citizens elect pretty good leaders when they are choosing their treasurer for the chama, when they are choosing, you know, their leaders in, you know, other positions. You know, whether it's the cattle dip who is going to, you know, represent us and all of that. And of course, now you keep moving up into maybe the cooperatives that earn a lot of money. But what has happened over time is that leadership positions have been captured by political interests. And this phenomenon can be traced back to the all-powerful presidency that we had under the repealed constitution, where the president had the power to appoint and to dismiss the judges, whether it's the head of police, cabinet ministers, and this brought in the politicization of our institutions. And then people were working at the behest of the president, and with no accountability to citizens at all. The Constitution sought to fundamentally do away with that by creating an independent judiciary, an independent parliament, because even parliament's independence was suspect, trying to insulate even the positions of government. But as well as giving independence, there's also obligations, and those obligations are captured under Chapter 6. Okay. So what we can say is we have a culture, a very toxic culture of impunity that has been built up over time, that the Constitution is trying to unseat and get rid of. And of course, there's going to be resistance. So we have seen that, and I agree here with Alice, as she says, our leaders in Parliament are the ones who are given the power to pass the laws, to give effect to Chapter 6. And so, of course, they then diluted key provisions. So there's been a dilution of the provisions of Chapter 6 from the making of the Constitution. During the process of negotiating, the leaders, political leaders, were able to put some clawback clauses and then pass the statutes to give effect to Chapter 6 were watered down, whether it's the recall, whether it's clarity on the role of the EACC, whether it's provisions on wealth declaration. So Chapter 6 has been attacked. It's a chapter that's under aggressive onslaught by the political leadership. Okay. But it is rallying, and we are hopeful that with our efforts and combining with citizens and other citizen groups, as well as the vetting institutions, we'll be able to reclaim it. Okay. So thank you.
All right. Let me come to you, Derek. Let's look at Now, this chapter 6 itself, and what a leader that is, elected in office and probably has an issue when it comes to matters integrity. We are provided, we can recall this particular leader, but also the process of just recalling this particular leader is not that easy. So probably a citizen might not actually find, the process itself easy for them to start recalling a leader.
Yeah, and I think it was deliberate to make it very difficult to recall our leaders. That is why one of the objectives of Chapter 6 is to of the Red Card campaign is to sort of reach out to the gatekeepers of political office. So when it comes to clearance and qualifications, we are calling to EACC to make sure these people are not cleared for the ballot. We are calling to IBC to make sure they are not cleared. We even reach out to political parties during nominations just to block out these corrupt leaders. And then finally, we will be reaching out to the voters, and we will be telling them, look, once these people get into office, then the process of their removal is more complicated. It's very complicated. So we'd rather stop them before they get into office. And statistically, people with integrity questions continue perpetuating impunity once they are in office. So it's very difficult to recall these individuals. For instance, an MP, you need, I think close to, I'm not sure of the number of signatures, 100,000 or 1 million, and you can only remove them 2 years after the elections and not 2 years before the election. So it's impossible. So that is why we really need to be very critical and very serious about the vetting process to make sure that only the best get into office.
All right. Now, Alice, you're talking about letting the IBC should not allow them, EACC and all that. Yes. But these leaders themselves have the audacity to, come into and present themselves, knowing very well, I have a case pending in court. I was, there's corruption allegations and all that. Everything surrounding them. It just speaks that this is not somebody who is fit to lead this office, but they still just come out and say, I want to be elected because I see I'm fit to run this country. What do you make of that?
Let me say that, first of all, I do not stand in support of impunity, but then I just want to look at it jurisprudentially, that these people are banking and relying on the presumption of innocence. One is innocent until proven guilty. And then also remember that most of them being incumbent elected members of National Assembly, County Assembly, they believe that they are exercising direct democracy, direct representation of the people. And therefore, when you claw back to the kind of duties that are bestowed upon, commissions, constitutional institutions like IEBC, DPP's office, the judiciary, those are offices that exercise indirect democracy, seeing as the occupants of such offices are appointees, they're state officers, and therefore, that is how these elected members now coined up the term hatu pangwingwi, and I'm sorry, NCIC should not hear me, but that's on a light note. Yeah, so that is really what it is. And, just going back to the argument by my colleague Derek here, that, the judgment in 2013 that, just gave a leeway to, for us to elect people who had, pending cases in court is what opened the Pandora's box. But be that as it may, I believe under Article 163, the Supreme Court has the mandate to cleanse and sanitize its decisions and its declarations, and I think it's something they can overdo, because I think it's time that we start looking at people from an angle of integrity and also to enforce the provisions of Chapter 6.
We start looking from an angle of integrity. How long is that going to take?
No, it needs to be now. It needs to be now. Just as we have started inching closer towards attainment of 2/3 for women. I believe even the case for integrity now is timely more than ever, because our economy is bleeding simply from questions of integrity.
All right.
Yes.
Now, Wanjiru, let me come to you on this one. Most of the time when we argue about corruption here in the country, and people say probably you should let's now make corruption a legal thing so that it becomes, we can now start monitoring it. So if it becomes normal, then we will not be having a problem with it. Should we be doing the same with integrity? Should we lower the bar when it comes to integrity and just say, okay, as much as you've been convicted, or rather even you were in charge of an office that has lost money and all that, or your character as a person is actually questionable, we are not going to be looking into that on matters integrity to measure whether you're fit to run office or not? Kindly, if you can unmute, sorry, Wanjiru.
Apologies.
So.
It's an interesting question and a very important conversation to have. Interestingly, political office is the only place we are thinking of lowering integrity thresholds. I'm sure, Brian, when you were canvassing this job, had you had a case of sexual assault or murder or theft from your former position, you would not have been considered. So it's only in political office that we seem to think we need to lower the bar. And I think as a country, we really need to confront this. When you look at the kind of figures, we lost 7.8 in the Thames scandal during COVID. This is borrowed money that we're going to have to pay a very high 1.9 to NYS, 215 billion lost on Eurobond. Bad leaders make bad politics, make bad development. So we need to link the type of governance we have with the type of leaders we have. And we have seen this. There are some leaders who are able to maintain, to file their audits without any concerns from the Auditor General, no concerns from the Controller of Budget, because these are leaders of integrity. They are professional and they're leaders of integrity. So I want to say that Kenyans work hard, but we have a lot of endowments in terms of our, maybe regional, a lot of very good policies, but the corruption issue, the conflict of interest issue keeps holding us back. So that as we sit here, we are facing, very high cost of living. We are losing competitiveness regionally. Our partners are overtaking us because of poor governance.
Okay. All right.
So I want to end by saying that Chapter 6 is the chapter that allows, puts in place political accountability, that makes our political leaders accountable to us for their conduct in office. So that when they sign their performance contract, or when we elect them on the social contract, we are able to hold them accountable for delivering healthcare, delivering agriculture, delivering good sanitation. Okay. So if we get rid of Chapter 6, then we are actually destroying our democracy. We must look at the Constitution. One of the key issues of Constitution that the Constitution set to deal with was abuse of office and abuse of power.
All right.
So let us not fall into the trap that our political leaders like to set by saying we can't fight this corruption thing, because they're the main beneficiaries of this corruption, or the enablers. Let us remember that corruption kills, corruption costs, corruption is not sustainable, it creates inequity, creates poverty, and we must fight it by choosing good leaders and being responsible citizens ourselves.
Right.
Maybe the last qualification, as Alice talked about direct democracy. I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding of direct democracy is, and this was defined quite well in the BBI ruling, direct democracy is the expression of people. Article 2 tells us the people may exercise their sovereign power directly or through their democratically elected representatives. So maybe let's just be careful with the terms to ensure that the direct sovereignty that's vested in the people is not in any way diluted or given to our political leaders, because that's representative democracy. Right. Thank you.
All right. Now, let me come to you, Derek, as probably prepare to take a break here. 2013, it has been argued as that was probably the first time we, made it worse for us here in the country, because that now people will be looking at that and saying, if we elected a president and his deputy who were at that particular time facing charges at the ICC, then if somebody wants to be an MCA, why should they not be given a chance?
Well, I think partly is because our constitution has been also growing, and of course the jurisprudence around it has also grown and changed. And I think it's very important for us to differentiate between what is ethical and what is criminal. So there's a lot of confusion between those two things, and the moment you hear innocent until proven guilty, that is a criminal threshold. But there's an ethical threshold under Chapter 6 and in the Constitution that we are trying to push. And it needs to be clear that you can be criminally, you can have no criminal record, but at the same time you are unethical. Okay. And I'll just give you an example. For instance, you know what the EACC does on asset recovery. So if EACC finds I'm a public officer, I have stolen some funds, and they come, the asset recovery process happens or unexplained wealth, and I say, okay, yes, I admit I took this money, I will return it, and there are no criminal charges opened up against me. So at the end of it, I will have no criminal record. But there is something that has happened that finds me unfit to hold office. So the first thing the court did at that time, which we disagreed with, is it looked, or it focused only on the criminal understanding to apply the criminal and principles to ethical arguments which we were pushing. But that has since changed. If you, shortly afterwards, the first Deputy Chief Justice under the new constitution was removed from office for pinching a nose. There was no criminal case filed against her. There was no, I think there was a civil suit, but it was settled, but just pinching a nose. And what the Judicial Service Commission and all Kenyans felt was that it was unethical. It did not bring dignity to her office.
So that should apply, should cut across both.
And it has been in some way applying, because what we've seen is the courts have consistently been appreciating ethical standards in the Constitution. We've seen governors who have been told to step aside and not access their offices, yet they have not been found guilty. We've seen, and we've seen those judgments. We've seen the courts boldly pronouncing on this, and we are positive that in the coming years, if possible, even within the coming months, then we will be able to get a bold statement from the court on that issue.
Now, I think I want to take a short break here, and when we come back, we'll be looking into why when it comes to prosecution, and at this particular moment, we're also looking at the DPP halting prosecution, also charging those who have been accused of, one or two things when it comes to matters integrity, corruption, and all that. And just giving them time to campaign. Then we'll come back to, start following on those cases later on, probably when they're already elected into office. What exactly informs that? Now, I'm taking a short break here on the Bottom Line, KE. What are we talking about? Leadership and integrity. Don't go too far. Continue sending in your feedback on our socials at Amoy Brown on Twitter at LookUpTV. The hashtag is the BottomLineKE.
business? Broadcast your sermon, share birthday wishes, make funeral announcements, produce adverts and documentaries? Then book and advertise with us today by calling us on +254 700 893 542
700-893-542
or email us on sales@look-up.tv.
Hi there, my name is George Washuri. I am so happy to see you, and today I am here to enumerate, to explain how we package our land investment. We have 5 levels of our property, and we classify these levels as 1 star, 2 stars, 3 star, 4 star, and 5 star. This is what we mean, that if you buy a property that is 1 star with Optiven, one of the things that is evident, the property is cheaper, is below $500,000. And this particular property is basically bare land. We only do subdivision, put the beacons, and then produce titles. The second level, we call it 2 star. This is prime land, whereby we grade the roads, we put a marking fence, do the beacons, and produce titles. The third level, we call it 3 stars. This 3 star is value added plots. We do the malam, we do the water, we do the mesh fence, and there's a caretaker on site. The fourth level is 4 star. 4 star is ready to build development. We do very nice maram roads, we plant the trees, we put the water tower, we also put a caretaker on site, and finally, the 5 star. The 5 star is premier, it's the top level, and this one, we do cable roads, we do water management through underground culverts, we do underground power, we do fountain for water, we do beautiful and nice permanent gates, we do perimeter wall, and also do install the CCTV, and the whole property is manned by uniformed security. Some of these properties, these 5-star properties, we do a clubhouse and also construct swimming pool. Thank you once more for trusting Optiven. We value you. We are at Absa Plaza, 14th floor and 15th floor. God bless you.
Like, follow, subscribe, click the notification button. Join the Look Up TV movement now. Now.
All right, now, thank you so much for staying with us here on the Bottom Line KE. We are looking into the issue of leadership and integrity, especially at this particular moment when we are about to elect leaders in office to lead us. But some of them have been red-carded for matters integrity. Others have been accused of corruption, others charged in court, and still they are on the front line wanting to be re-elected in office. Right now, having this discussion with me, I have in studio my guests who, before we went for a break, we are just looking at it, and I want to throw it to you, Alice. When it comes to protecting these individuals, because it seems that some of them, we cannot touch them in terms of following up on these particular issues and making sure that they do not get on the ballot. There's always a leeway when it comes to, the institutions that have been entrusted in making sure they are blocked from being re-elected or actually being cleared to go into go all the way to the ballot? What happens with these institutions from where you sit?
Yeah, so I believe, first of all, an institution as powerful as the Office of the DPP needs to work hand in hand with the judiciary and ensure that it acquires sufficient protection and concomitance in execution of duties, especially in investigations and prosecution of cases, so that most of these people who have been accused of perpetrating heinous crimes, against our economy, against humanity, against security, do not really ascend to office, because I believe that occupying an elective position is a divine duty. It is a divine calling where you exercise the will of God to the people. And you also act as an intermediary between the people and the state. I mean, in the same breath, in the exercise of the social contract theory. And so, to me, I believe that the office of the DPP should be working together hand in hand with the judiciary to make sure that there is seamless flow of investigations and reporting to the judiciary to make sure that these cases are watertight. Remember that Article 159 gives, powers to the judiciary, because it says that the exercise of powers of the judiciary is donated directly from the people. Okay. Yeah.
Now, before I go to Wanjiru, let me come to you, Derek. When it comes to vetting these individuals, we are calling on all the institutions that are mandated with that, IBC, but to some extent, how the confidence of these politicians to throw themselves back into the race seems like they're not even afraid of what could happen with these institutions. That is why they will dare again to go back and say, I would want to vote. They're looking at a possibility of being cleared. How do we balance that?
It's good you asked about the institutions. Let me just give you a breakdown of how it has been working. How it works. So if you are interested in elective office, there are various clearances you need. There's the educational clearance, and there are institutions which clear you. Bankruptcy, there are institutions which give you clearance, tax compliance, and all those things. But when it comes to ethics, leadership, and integrity, it has been a bit fuzzy. So what has been happening is you go to ESCC website, you download a form, a self-declaration form, you fill the form, and then you get a copy to IBC. And then IBC will send names of all the people who have submitted applications for elective office to ESCC. Then ESCC will write to IBC telling them, out of these names you have given us, 50 or so, we feel that they do not meet the integrity threshold. So it will recommend that that IBC does not clear them. But IBC has been clearing all those individuals because it's not so clear who is the final custodian of Chapter 6 or who vets. So we are not sure who vets. Is it IBC? Is it ESCC? Is it ESCC for IBC? It hasn't been clear. And one of the things we are trying to argue, and we filed a petition in court, is that there is already a specialized institution in the Constitution that is custodian of Chapter 6, and that is ESCC. So if you need IBC, ideally, she will just wait for a clearance, whether you have it or not from ESCC.
So ESCC should be the final institution and primary, that actually says you've been cleared to vie, and if you're not, then you don't go.
Yes, it gives you a clearance on leadership and integrity, on ethics. The criminal one, you'll get it from DCI through the good conduct. But Chapter 6, you should get it from ESCC. The same way, taxation, you go to KRA. So IBC will just wait, whether you have it or not. And we really want to strengthen ESCC. And we want the court to pronounce that ESCC is that institution, so that moving forward, whatever battles you have with ESCC, IBC will wait for you to finish them and then finally come. But there has to be vetting. issues of ethics and integrity are as important as academic, taxation, and all these other things.
Okay.
They cannot be sidelined.
All right. Now, Wanjiru, let me come to you. Derek mentions in strengthening the EACC. How do we do that? From where you sit, how do we make it strong so that when it comes to matters vetting these leaders before we elect them to office, or rather, even so that it stops them from actually coming to confuse us and electing them to office? How do you do that?
I think there is a number of things. As Derek has pointed out, there is a gap in law. There's also what we call the clawback clauses that require, that seem to imply that even if you're charged with a very serious crime, you can still run for political office as long as you're filing your case in court. And this argument of presumption of innocence is used. So we have gaps in law. We have gaps in the Constitution. We have gaps in the legislation emanating from the Constitution. And ideally, these should be aligned. They should be strengthened. So apart from the gaps in law around Chapter 6, there are also other practices that have come up that we've seen that promote conflict of interest. There's a lot of talk about the Deva Commission, the early 70s, that gave public officers the leeway to conduct business as being one of the, the weak links that kind of opened up this this deluge of conflict of interest. Of course, the Constitution does outlaws or proscribes conflict of interest, but we have contradictions in law, one law contradicting with the other. So legally, we have gaps and contradictions. But then in terms of our culture, we have developed a culture that's very tolerant of corruption. And whereas I don't think that Kenyans are inherently corrupt, we have a dominant culture that incentivizes corruption. If you're corrupt and you make a lot of money, you become famous, you become a celebrity, you get the front row seat in all places of worship and all other places. You really enjoy a lot of honors. So I agree, we oppose the BPI on several grounds, but really support what they said, that at the end of the day, we have a software problem. Okay. And to deal with that, we have to go back to the root cause. We have to address our culture. We have to address our social incentives. And one of those social incentives is we have to make corruption expensive. We really have to let leaders who have stolen public money know they have no place in our midst. That if you have a case of corruption, abuse of office, sexual assault, murder, these kind of misbehaviors, first finish your case in court. Once you do, if you're able to prove that, those charges don't apply, if you're able to successfully fight them, then you can run after that. So we need to work on both the legal as well as the social, our culture. Okay. And that we need to have the civic education. We need to have a reflection as a country, because there is no country that can grow without strong institutions, without rule of law. It's not possible. You become what Mwalimu Julius Nyerere said of Kenyans, we become a man-eat-man society, and that's what we are. It's a society for the rich, and you benefit by being in the class of the rich and the powerful, and if you're not in that class, then you're downtrodden and stepped on. No country can grow, and already we are seeing the pains of our lack of governance.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, now, Alice, I want to come to you and ask, what are we as a country? She mentioned some matters to do with corruption and probably as a Kenya, as a country rather than as a Kenya, as a country, are we a corrupt people? And as you answer that, what are we risking when we get to elect these leaders in office again?
You know, for me, having presented myself for elective position, I will not really want to insulate or cover up for Wanjiko. I would say pure and simple, we are a corrupt people,
So
all of us. Yes, and unfortunately, it is the electorate who actually is promoting and allowing this culture of corruption, because whenever somebody presents themselves for election, they do not want to listen to, you know, the transformative policies that this person is proposing unto them. They come with the expectation of what is in it for us financially. Okay. Yes.
So you want to come into office, so what exactly are we getting?
Exactly, yeah, because you know the argument that they perpetrate is that we shall elect you and then you get into limbo and you know you lose touch with us, you'll not visit us again. So before you disappear, yes, let's eat something from you. And after all, after we elect you, you will go there for self-aggrandizement. Okay. First of all, the first thing in your intro will be increasing your salaries to recoup and tide you over for what you have spent during the campaigns. That's a sad truth. Okay. So starting from the electorate, we are all rotten, and we need to conduct serious introspection into ourselves. And it is sad to note that you know, one of the very lucrative and promising provisions in BBI was the national ethos, which I really championed, and I was part of drafting because I believe that you know, our core values begin with national ethos, and it was going to come in to buttress what has been prescribed under Article 10 of the Constitution. Okay. So yeah, we actually stand to lose a lot. Our regional competitiveness, as Wanjiru has said, is, you know, quickly dwindling away because of our culture of corruption. And corruption is not only on a financial aspect. There are so many aspects to corruption. There's nepotism, you know, favoritism, there's all that cronism, clanism, all those things. Again, might I also want to say that we are not also looking at corruption just from, you know, the level of the National Assembly and the legislative bodies. Corruption is first hatched at the political parties. Because remember, all these people who are elected into the assemblies belong to, you know, one or another political party. That is where their political careers are nurtured. So if they start learning the art of corruption from the political parties, then I believe that the first place that needs true and real social engineering is the political party. Okay.
Derek, let me come to you. On that particular issue that I just asked, on what exactly are we, because you're looking at, we've lost enough already because we've elected leaders who are not fit to run. And these leaders who are not fit to run still want to come back. And if they are not cleared, because we have a gap when it comes to law and the institutions that are mandated to be vetting these particular individuals, we might actually see them again come 2022 being sworn in with the Bible in their hands and saying, I'm ready to serve you and free from corruption and all that. So are we going to lose more than we've already lost at this particular moment? And are we even feeling that ourselves?
Well, if we vote them in, we will lose more. But first of all, let me disagree a bit with my sister. I don't think we are all rotten. I mean the electorate, and if so, then not entirely. I believe a lot of citizens are now starting to understand and appreciate the importance of voting the right leaders and the value-based system of leadership. Yesterday, when the red card list was released, I followed through the media and on the feedback. I mean the other day, the feedback that citizens were giving, the reaction to it, and a lot of citizens were actually in support. They were saying that, yeah, actually, this individual should not be in office. And as Wanjiru had earlier started, if you localize or personalize that conversation on ethics, then it applies to almost everyone. If you ask the average citizen whether they would get maybe a housemaid who was a pending case on child abuse. They will not. But something happens during elections. I think elections is like war. Everything is fair, and somehow people's mentality just change. And when they finally get to the ballot, somehow there are those who go through. In 2017, the first red card campaign was conducted. There were 20 individuals who were red carded, and out of the 20, 7 did not get into office. Of the 13 who got into office, 2 were impeached, and 1 was found guilty of the offense that he was red carded for. So that just is validation that actually ethics works. And I think once we hammer that message hard, that if you vote for this individual again, that it might even lead to loss of life. And I think that lesson is really creeping into Kenya's psyche, and
So
I am very
people are
positive.
actually embracing this campaign when it comes to having these leaders being red carded.
I am very positive that during the elections we would see some people with questionable integrity lessons falling out of people's favor. I am positive. All is not lost.
All right, now Wanjiru, let me come to you as I wind up, and I just want to get your bottom line on when it comes to this. And before I do that, I just want to text some of the leaders that have been red carded in the interest of the public. The Member of Parliament, Embakasi East, Babu Owino, charged with offense of attempted murder. Rigathi Gachagua, who is Deputy President aspirant, implicated in graft and accounts of approximately 200 million Kenya shillings frozen by the Assets and Recovery Authority, charged with conspiracy to defraud the county government of Nyeri. Sospito Jamong, MP aspirant Teso South, charged with conspiracy to defraud the county government of Busia to the tune of 8 million. This is a huge amounts of money, and these are figures that are already known in the public. Red carded in 2017, this is Governor Anne Waiguru, who seeks to also be who is the gubernatorial aspirant Kirinyaga County. She was investigated for 1.9 billion lost in the NYS scandal under the watch as Cabinet Secretary for Devolution, alleged to have engaged in acts of abuse of office and embezzlement of funds amounting to close to 10 million shillings through payment of travel allowances for non-existence, and we saw that play out in the National Assembly and the Senate. Impeached by the County Assembly of Kirinyaga, her impeachment was nullified by Senate, but the Senate report implicated her of several offenses. Now, those are just some of them, and I want to get your feedback here, Wanjiru, as we wind up, your bottom line when it comes to now leadership and integrity on these particular individuals that we want to elect into office. Where are we as a country, and are we learning any lessons just as we wind up?
I think first is to say that corruption and abuse of office is about power. And Kenya is a country that's founded on the unjust exercise of power. We didn't properly dismantle the colonial state. And so the abuse of power has enabled the beneficiaries of illegal power to keep, enjoying that power. So our corruption is intricately linked with our history, our colonial history, and this inequality that's, very much part of our structural character. The Constitution seeks to undo this. The Constitution seeks to make offices accountable, resources equitably accessible, deal with historical injustices. It seeks to do all that. And you have seen the resistance to the Constitution by those who enjoy that unjust power. So we must remember that this fight we are fighting is a fight to liberate Kenya. It's, maybe you could call it the ultimate liberation, where we can have equitable access to resources. But in the process, of course, like you said, we've suffered in terms of our social ingrained culture, and we need to, re-educate ourselves, look at our national values. But back to your question, there have been some gains. There are some leaders we had put on the list that didn't make it through the nomination process, and we were very encouraged. because the leaders on this list have been cited in government reports for various abuse of office, whether it's hate speech, whether it's issues of murder, rape, corruption, financial corruption, financial abuse of office. There are some who didn't make it past the nomination. So already we are saying, well, great, they didn't make it past the nomination. There are some we are aware will not make it through the election, through the election process. But of course, some will make it in office. But let's be encouraged. We have seen corrupt leaders impeached, and I think those who are impeached will not make it through. If we look at the jurisprudence, because once you're impeached, once you're convicted, those charges remain.
All right. I think we seem to be having a technical hitch. But let me come to you as we wind up. Your bottom line when it comes to this issue of leadership and integrity, Chapter 6 as a whole. Let me start with you, Derek, before I go to Alice.
Okay. Alice had earlier mentioned something about leadership office being a reward and service from God. And I agree with her. Leadership is a reward. And the level of scrutiny and expectation of a public officer is like Caesar's wife. It should be beyond reproach. In fact, it is our strong feeling that if you read the Constitution very clearly, you will come to the conclusion that anyone who has a shadow of doubt should not even think about occupying public office. And that is the only way we will rescue this country. There's always a connection between persons with the questions of integrity, immorality, and theft of public funds, loss of life, violation of human rights. We've seen them. Right. I think that is something we just need to take notice of. So the standard should be that high.
Okay. All right, Alice, what is the bottom line on leadership and integrity?
Integrity, integrity, integrity. Just as my friend Derek here says, it is upon us as the electorate to make sure that we conduct due diligence and to ensure that the person we are entrusting to represent us, to lead us, and to speak for us is a person that is beyond reproach. Because a leader is a person who sits at the seat of God. God is a dispenser of justice and mercy.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, thank you so much for your time here on the Bottom Line KE. I really do appreciate you getting time and just having this discussion about leadership and integrity, and the discussion about the country and where we are heading, because it is very important at this particular moment, especially when we are going to be electing leaders who are going to be representing us for the next 5 years, right? Yes. I really do appreciate your time. Now, that does it for us here on the Bottom Line KE. Thank you so much for making time. And just once again, my guests in studio, I had Alice Ongare, who is a lawyer, Derek Mahanda, who is the Program Officer, Policy and Legal and Institutional Frameworks at the Transparency International Kenya, and Wanjiru Gikonyo, who was joining us via Skype, and she's the National Coordinator, TISA. We seem to have had a little bit of a technical hitch at the end of it, but yeah, she was giving her final comment, right, that particular issue, on this particular discussion. Right, now I want to wish you a very lovely week ahead, and also a good night. Let's do this again next time. My name is Brian Amuai. Our sign language interpreter tonight has been Josephine Oko. Have yourselves a lovely night.
We value your feedback and welcome your complaints about our programming and operations.